Oh, Hannah's here. Do you want to tell me what to do?
Only after a certain person called her in.
Uh, she's usually lazy, so that's not that unexpected, to be honest. Um, Wait, is this the right contention or not?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Sure. I don't really know what I'm gonna do here, but I guess I'll just read it. Yeah. Here, how about this? Do you want to read it, and then we can all provide feedback for you?
Okay.
You're lagging, Hannah, I think. At least for me.
Okay.
Can you also like scroll in a bit, like, cause I'm on mobile and this just looks. Actually, never mind. I got it. I can scroll in.
Okay.
Okay. Ready? Can I read?
Yeah, just go whenever.
Okay. We affirm, resolved, on balance, the benefit of urbanization in sub-Saharan Africa outweighs the harms. Urbanization plays a key role in the development of a nation or region. According to the World Bank, urbanization creates opportunity for more economic development, and more of it could be of benefit to rural areas as well. Consequently, the Center for Strategic and International Studies finds that, due to urbanization, the global share of African urban residents is projected to grow from 11.3% in 2010 to 20.2% by 2050. In this speech, I will be talking about why the benefits of urbanization outweigh the harms. Intention 1: Development of infrastructure. Urbanization in Africa leads to better infrastructure and living standards. Lumen Learning states that overall health conditions improve with the advent of sanitation systems during the period of urbanization. The development of such infrastructure has saved countless lives in the past and the present, and additional infrastructure put in place, including education systems, healthcare, and sustainable sources of basic needs, have also saved many more lives. This brings me to my second point. Contention 2: Economic growth. According to Deloitte, the poor state of infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa, that is electricity, water, roads, information, and ICT, reduced national economic growth by 2 percentage points each year and cut business productivity by as much as 40%. The implementation of such infrastructure through urbanization would thus drastically increase economic growth in the subcontinent, giving jobs to millions of people in the region as well as dramatically improving current living standards. Intention 3: Empowerment of people. The growth of the economy of the sub-Saharan Africa will increase the global power of the people in that region. As Science Direct states, economic growth forces policy imperatives in a local and global context. This would help such a population to be heard on the global stage, empowering the people of those regions to try to make such change. Thus, we affirm.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I guess people have feedback. Maybe we should like go around the table or something. Go down the list.
All right. So I have a little question. So I like the third contention, right? Like I like the spirit of the third contention, but I think there could be like a little more detail that can be added to it. Like the growth of the economy will increase the global power of the people in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm sorry, and like that's cool and all, but I feel like there also needs to be some impacts. Like, why does anyone care? I mean, and I know obviously like that people should care, but I feel like we do need to clarify like why. Like, there needs to be some sort of impact, or else. I mean, of course, the argument that nobody cares, that's a little like that. That's a little like, you know. But I still think you need to clarify exactly why we care and the impacts that result from the empowerment of the people.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it was supposed to be under 300 words, and I kind of ran out of words. But yeah, you make a good point.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, actually. I don't really know what empowerment of the people means, right? Like, what does this actually mean? For a population to be heard on the global stage, like what happens? Like, yeah, what happens when this happens?
Further increase living standards because they'll get what they need. I guess I have to be more clear on that and research that a bit more. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you need like specific evidence like indicating that, right? Because I think being heard doesn't necessarily equate to like better lives overall, right? Like for example, people in Hong Kong, right? Like everyone knows about the protests, but nothing's like really happened, right? Like having a voice doesn't necessarily mean leading to something, right?
Tangible change.
Yeah, I think in general in public forum it's easier to like talk about just like people dying or like poverty or like direct impacts. I think like empowering people or like giving people a voice is kind of sketchy just because like I think public forum as a whole is a bit more conservative and like we're very cynical, or people tend to be more cynical about like what actually happens even when you like give people a voice, right? Like I think a common example is the US government does a lot of very sketchy things. Like it violates international law a lot of times.
Like, a lot of times is an understatement.
Yeah, it does a lot of very questionable things, right? Like even if we give it a voice, even if we establish international standards, the US government's probably just gonna ignore it anyways. And I think people in public forum are quite cynical.
Yeah, I'm going to probably make it more direct then.
Yeah. It's a good idea. I used to run this stuff in like sophomore year. Like you're like already ahead of the game. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. So like the same thing, right? With like every single other contention, the concept of decentralization, right? You don't really know what necessarily like development of infrastructure means, right? Like, why does it really matter if we like have more health systems? Because like this is an on-balance resolution, right? So half of your debate is going to be not only like saying the good things, but telling your judge why these good things are more important than the bad things. So it's more important to be able to internalize an impact from like the development of infrastructure to like millions of lifted out poverty, right? But it's a lot easier to do that if you like quantify these things. And like economic growth and like infrastructure development, they are quantifiable things, like unlike giving people a voice or whatever. So I think it's probably in your best interest to find data suggesting like economic growth, like with this many people out of poverty, or like for every $100 you spend on infrastructure, the quality of life of these people is improved by this much, right? Like these are quantifiable things, so I think it's important.
Can you really quantify how like quality of life changes? Like suddenly your life just improved by 10 points. Like
yeah, like usually it's measured in like say yearly income or
disposable income.
Poverty.
No, disposable income, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, you just make up some stats and then people believe you.
Oh.
And public forum is just about making stuff up.
Okay, I've got something like written, but it doesn't have like virtually any evidence. If that works.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we can look at it next. So actually, I have another comment for this one. I don't really get the point of like this part in the introduction. Shouldn't this be in the first contention? Something?
Yeah, it's like there's not really a point, right, in having that, because you're just saying it's like a good idea. It's like a good thing, right? But
shouldn't that be like a conclusion though? Like
no, there's no point in having it, I think, overall, because it really doesn't give your judge like a reason to vote for you. It just sort of asserts that it is a good thing.
Yeah, we don't really have introductions or conclusions in public forum. Everything should be under contention, I think.
Because remember the stuff I talked about like last week about like this time trade-off? It's like having an introduction or a conclusion, it doesn't really help you, right? Like it won't, like your judge isn't voting off of your introduction, but also like you spend time on it, so it's like dead time, right? So there's not really a point in having it, but I guess like if you need the words, you can like have it, right? I also think this infrastructure contention could probably go into the second, like your infrastructure and economic growth contention could probably be like merged into one contention, because I think these things are sort of related, right? Like the economic growth stuff is talking about like the poor state of infrastructure. So shouldn't it makes like logical sense to place infrastructure into or like into the impact of economic growth.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And like the way that I usually structure cases is like having multiple links, right? Like economic growth happens through the development of infrastructure, but just also having more trade or more businesses or like all sorts of things that can result from urbanization, right? And I think the like strategic value of that is like if someone spends time refuting one thing, like even if you lose like your two other links, if you win one, you can still win your impact of economic growth, right? And I think that's like critical because it just gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of being able to debate within the round.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And this is like semantics too, but when you like cite evidence like Lumen Learning, it's probably a good idea to put the year in, and instead of citing like the organization, cite like the author or like author from organization, because I think like people at camp told me like it's not like the organization, it's not like Washington Post that's writing like urbanization super good, right? It's like the specific author. So
yeah, that's just what if your piece of evidence is a paper that has more than one author? Like, would you just list off all the authors, or
I usually just put the
one.
nicest sounding name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if one name is super long, I like don't put it in because it's like hard to read, right?
Yeah.
Just choose one. Don't put all of them, please.
Yeah. But if you like have time to spare, you can like go all out and like put the credentials in, because I think that way it like makes you sound fancy, and that's like a good trade-off, right? Because it like contributes to making your judge like you more.
That is assuming you have time for such a trade-off.
Yeah,
you probably do. I think like 50% of cases are just essentially worthless.
Okay, so I have a question. Would you rather like introduce like long arse credentials while at the same time like talking progressively, or would you rather not talk progressively? And like
I think at the end of the day, like credentials don't really matter, right? You just need to win your argument. So it's more important to be able to speak to the parent or like the judge who you're talking to, right? So obviously it's super important to be able to win your arguments by like talking in a manner that appeals to your judge rather than like fitting all the credentials in, right? Because that's the way that you're gonna win, right? And obviously like you can spit off the credentials in cross if you like want to seem smarter, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to look at another case?
So I've got a case that it's a pro case, but like it's a pro case for it's a pro case. It's not an extremely strong pro case, but it's a pro case nonetheless.
That's fine. Just put the link in the chat.
Oh no, I just got it here. Should I just read it?
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay, so here we go. According to Smith et al., most African countries are largely divided among ethnocultural and religious lines. Urbanization is bringing people from different ethnocultural backgrounds and different religious beliefs to have a common goal of economic pursuits from rural areas to urban centers. And in the process of attaining economic pursuits, they learn to live with the people of other beliefs. Large cities are mostly places where cultural diversity flourishes. African cities are there to exemplify the cultural, social, and religious diversity that is seen as fundamental characteristics of countries will develop economically and socially in an era where the global world is interdependent. While on economic pursuit, integration occurs in workplaces, schools, neighborhoods, streets, shopping malls, and soccer fields, according to Williams et al. So these African cities are like focal points in these developing countries, in which adaptation to new ways, new consumption, new technology, and production patterns, as well as new social institutions could be evolved, according to Smith et al. Historically, cities have been the seats of learning and education. Cities have been the centers of government and administrative organizations, and they have also performed the function of cultural or religious rallying points. Innovations through partnerships and interdependence of various cultural groups and cities, according to Jefferson et al., have, quote, contributed immensely to improving the quality of life of urban populations and to enhance the critical and catalytic roles of urban centers in rural development and transformation, unquote. With sustained urban-rural links, a development pipeline will flow from both sides, thereby making them interdependent in numerous ways. Even though certain South African cities we see have experienced certain levels of cultural discrimination in the form of xenophobia resulting in violence, these should be seen as early challenges that these cities will face in integrating as a result of unequal economic growth. Most South African cities, and this includes sub-Saharan African, most African cities are still extremely diverse. Diversity is not sufficient in and of itself to bring sustained inclusion of the different groups that populate a city. Government agencies, social groups, and civil societies have influential roles in shaping social integration. Therefore, African cities will continue to play a vital role in creating a socially inclusive environment as they grow rapidly. They will grow ever more into the focal point of industrial and post-industrial economic growth. Period.
But not gonna lie, I kind of zoned out. Can you send me the case so I can read over it?
Okay.
Actually, no, my internet cut out. I think that's a better excuse.
Wait, what are you talking about? My internet cut out.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
Okay, my internet is like weirdly bad, right? Because it only like gets bad whenever I'm on Teams. So like whenever, yeah, it's so weird.
That's a sketchy excuse.
Whenever
literally
Lisa starts
true.
I'm just gonna paste the entire thing in here.
Can you send me the case too?
Yeah. How about people that haven't talked yet should talk? I think we want to have more participation, you know?
Someone has raised their hand.
Oh, Nicole's. Is that Nicole?
Yes, I'm back.
Nicole's here.
Wait, Nicole, you deserted the company.
I was returning stuff to school. But Vishnu, what is your question?
Oh,
I think his hand has been up for like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Because you kept raising it and putting it down. I was like, does she have a question? So what were we doing right now? Okay, so Troy read his case.
Yeah.
To my chagrin, nobody actually took it in.
Okay, so here's like my advice off the bat, right? That was like a lot of words, but I like in one year, like out the other, right? Like I like heard a lot of buzzwords, I feel like, but none of it really stuck. And I think that what's really important, especially for like oral delivery, is just like.
Wait, did you send the case? I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Can you like hear me?
Put it in the Google Drive.
Yeah.
I'm on mobile right now. Such tasks are difficult.
Wait, hand over Nicole. Can you send it to me? I don't have it.
Wait, Troy, where did you put it?
1 moment.
Okay. So is it only Troy that read his case?
Vishnu also read his.
I read that too.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, it's in the chat. Okay. Wait, I don't see any cards.
What's your case?
Exactly. That's my point. There was evidence, but I didn't insert the cards in there yet.
This like little like a report, right? Like I go on activity.
Yeah, this is a pretty good essay.
But this sounds like a huge Wikipedia. I think the big I think the key to know here is oral delivery needs to be really good at pointing things out specifically, right? Is blah blah blah, right? 20 million people are lifted out of poverty. I think the reason why being able to signal when things are happening is so critical is because it just sticks, right? The judge knows, oh, this is the thing that I need to pay attention to, or this is why something is important, right? Crap, where did it go? Where'd your case go? It's not in the chat.
Okay. Another piece of advice I have, I think.
Say what? Wait, what happened to my case?
It disappeared out of the chat.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
But I think just a thing for your case, it doesn't have any impacts like Hannah says, but I think it could on the neg, because you were talking about xenophobia and they're all different ethnic groups, so I guess there could be conflict. And I guess you could run a neg case on that, how there's
run a pro and a neg case on the same thing.
Or racism from one group towards another.
Yeah, that's true. But they'll just dismiss that as a common argument, right? Racism, it occurs in every single city, and it even occurs in non-urban areas as well. So they're just gonna say, well, it happens everywhere. So yeah.
I think it's even more important in cities though, because when you're in rural areas, how can you really if someone lives 10 miles away from you and you're not talking to them, okay, I guess you hate them, but what are you really doing to them? Nothing. But in urban areas, cities where they have more forms of social welfare and there's more government and stuff, there's probably policing too. The impact's probably a lot bigger as to what comes from racism.
Yeah, I guess, but at the same time, it's going to happen nevertheless. The thing is, I feel lots of universities, in fact, most of them are in urban areas and stuff. So, I mean, I do think that one of the rebuttals is just that the benefits, at least when it comes to racism, do outweigh. There might be racism, but racism here can only be a result of the institutions that are designed to help the people, which you still in some way benefit from these institutions, even if there was racism in there, if you know what I mean. They would benefit from the institutions even if there were racism. Which means which means racism is kind of like a tax, but if you're getting money, if you're winning the lottery, right, you can afford this tax because it's a tax on your winnings, right?
But it's also kind of it depends on the framework, honestly. Racist arguments are, I mean, not racist arguments, oh my god, racism arguments are also really strong, because I don't know, they're just oh, they read the framework, it's racism is the worst form of oppression, everything that's connected to racism sucks.
I think for now we're not gonna think too much about these sort of framework impacts, mainly because we debate in Washington, where I think a lot of the judges are less willing to evaluate these things, right? Because I think a lot of parents, they don't really care, right? And also just this idea of racism is really sus, right? Because why does racism really matter when you're literally not in poverty anymore, right? If
that's
would you rather
be
would you rather have racism happen against you, or would you rather be eating a bowl of rice a day? That's the trade-off that you make.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Racism is a division function, not a subtraction function. So
I don't think judges are gonna buy that. I'm sorry. I don't think that's very compelling.
I mean, at least institutionalized, because I don't know.
No, it's what I'm just saying is racism is a hard argument to win, right? Because there's zero clash, and I don't think judges evaluate frameworks.
At least in Washington.
Yeah.
Prosecuting judges are conservative.
Yeah. They're all like Asian conservative.
Asian moms.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I mean, because if you think about it, like Washington's supposed to be liberal, but I don't know.
I think the public fund
Demographic
circuit's like conservative. At least not as liberal as the rest of the
Go to
public fund.
California.
You can be liberal and like racist.
I don't think they're racist. I just don't think they
definitely-
evaluate them.
But okay, we're getting off topic. Does anyone else have contentions that they wrote?
Wait, I thought someone had a neg.
Okay, so I'm kind of like super off track here, but when they talk about urbanization for like the con thing, so you would run something like it's expensive for the US or like
What?
what? Good question.
Okay, so this is
Hold the
urbanization
phone.
in sub-Saharan Africa, right? So it's not like the US is paying for it. It's just it happens on its own, right? It's like a
China's
natural
probably paying for
like
it.
when the economy grows.
China's
And
Okay,
probably
so
goes
what's
down.
the bad part about that?
Well, the like all those health risks. Oh wait, I don't think you were here. Did you watch the last session? Okay, but we went over it, right? Like there's health risks, infrastructure sucks. If there's an earthquake, everyone there dies. What else was there? Like
So basically, like, should they stay undeveloped just cause? Oops.
no, it's just like is it good or bad, right? Like urbanization is obviously still gonna happen, but we're just saying is that good or bad?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like a benefits on balance resolution, right? So you just like take something that's happening and you're like, are the good things that occur due to it better than the things that like are bad that are happening due to it? I thought someone had a neg.
Oh wait, one thing. Troy and Jerry, you two, I mean, I think only Troy is here, but you both put down second speaker as like the role that you wanted. I think that's fine if you guys aren't going to be partners in the future, but if you are, I would just talk to your partner about that.
Yeah. We talked about that, and
Mhm.
yeah, I think one of us is going first. I forgot exactly who it was.
Okay, well, just send me an email later and tell me who is what.
All right.
Yes, someone has an egg, right?
Robert, who had the neg?
I have no idea. Wait, I was not informed of this.
Wait, really? Okay.
Yeah, no one told me.
Okay.
Someone should have a neg.
If no one has a neg, then we're gonna go over rebuttals. Someone pull the first case back up. Robert, please.
Wait, I lost the link. How did the link get deleted?
Wait, also, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where in the name of God's good earth is Lisa?
Oh, Lisa, like
Lisa removes herself. She's never here again.
she's distanced. She's like she doesn't give a fuck anymore. She like doesn't care. So,
Well, that's
Anna, this is
very-
recorded.
she doesn't care yet. She doesn't care about you guys anymore.
very
so.
very harsh language.
Oof. Much real.
Okay, well, since
Wait, Vishnu, can you send the case again? I lost it. There you go.
Daniel, I thought you had a partner because on your sheet you said you didn't have a partner, but I thought you debated with someone like Vishnu or something. Can't remember. No. Who did you debate? Wait, Daniel, do you not have a partner?
No.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Let's see.
Oh, is this a neg case? Jacqueline send a neg case?
Yeah, Jacqueline.
Yeah, let's take that.
Okay.
Okay. Wait, are we doing rebuttals or are we looking at the neg case?
Let's look at the neg.
Okie dokie.
Who's gonna read it?
You.
Okay, I'll read it. Contention 1, sickness with increased urbanization. There is an increase of sickness. Subpoint A, poor infrastructure, sanitation. Borowski, Seba, and Grabinski 16 find that in 2016, cities such as Lagos and Kinshasa constitute urban agglomerations of over 10 million residents, while Dar es Salaam, Johannesburg, and Luanda are projected to reach that size by 2030. According to Africare.org, Sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest sanitation coverage on Earth, and roughly 70% of the population, approximately 600 million people, have no access to an improved source of sanitation. And if there were to be rapid urbanization, the government would only be overwhelmed along with all the other funds in infrastructure, education, and reforms. In the case of an epidemic, it would spread rapidly, killing millions of people with the unstable and unreliable sanitation and municipal systems along the population density that urbanization would bring. Without the proper planning, urbanization would only bring more people from the rural areas in search of jobs into the city and not actually reduce poverty. As of March 2020, Poldner finds that 80% of infrastructure projects fail at the feasibility and business plan stage. In fact, urbanization would only worsen the situation as businesses would hold more control, since with more people desperate for a job, owners could lower wages and none could protest, as there would be so many who would be willing to take the job as more people flood in. And with more poverty, there would be fewer people who have access to medical help in the case of sickness and epidemics, leading to the deaths of yet more people. For example, a study conducted by the National Center for Biotechnology Information showed that urban areas in sub-Saharan Africa cities had higher level of malaria transmission, according to Kaiser, Udinger, Castro, Smith, Tinger, and Singer in 2004. Based on population density maps, we have included Chad, Kenya, Mali, and Niger in our estimate because their major urban centers, namely all of those names, are located in areas where malaria transmission occurs. A rise in urbanization in sub-Saharan Africa often means that there is an increase in population in close living quarters. These cities are struggling to keep up with the pace of urbanization, resulting in poor housing and the lack of sanitation. Many diseases spread through person-to-person contact with urban areas with denser populations, and it will assist the breeding of diseases and make it harder to control. This puts urban cities at the risk of having a breakout when too many people contract the disease, having a negative impact on the health of citizens. Sick citizens means that the workforce of these cities may be compromised, resulting in a declining economy, potentially putting many out of jobs, all because the rapid urbanization of their sub-Saharan African city is promoting the spread of disease. That was a lot.
Yo, I'm gonna be like completely honest. That sounded like a whole buttload of slippery slope. Like A leads to B, which leads to C, which leads to D, which leads to E. Which, I mean, like it might not be, but it sounds like extremely like the frame, like it sounded like one.
Welcome to debate.
So you'll notice that a lot, and people win off these because generally saying it's a slippery slope is not a good enough response. You need to like prove why each slip is like untrue. So if in general the slips
or actually
are
just
actually for real,
actually just take out evidence that the first slip is untrue, and then everything else can be ignored because the first one's just
but
not.
the point is like most of them are like based in truth, right? So there's always a response to the response. That's why there is a debate in the first place.
Wow, Jesus.
Yeah, so that's like the point of debate, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I still agree with Troy that a lot of this seems like a slippery slope. I think all that you need to do is like add evidence, which of course, this is like the first draft, so it doesn't really matter. But like if you add evidence, it wouldn't be like a slippery slope. It'd be like, it's like logical, right? It makes sense, the things that you're saying. You just don't have a lot of evidence to back it up. What I would say is when you're quoting people, when you're citing people, you don't have to put all their names down, just put like one of them. Nobody cares which one it is. And also when you talk about like these cities, you can just say cities. You don't have to like list all of them. I think it would also be a pain in the butt to read during round. And it's kind of hard to
at all on top of like everything. Just like blah et al. And like another blah et al. And like such cities as like list 3 examples and go like there are like 148 more. Like there's no need to list out all 151 cities.
What? Okay. Jacqueline, you're not dumb. Just gotta put that out there. You're a very good debater. We do not put ourselves down in here. But anyways, all right, Robert, do you have any feedback on this case?
Wait, why am I getting called out here? Actually, I kind of agree with. I mean, I think a lot of debate is like kind of slippery slopey, right? Like a lot of debaters get away with claims that don't really sound true. Kind of like the carbon tax for that March topic for the UBI, right? It doesn't really sound true, but I think the problem is if you can't like point out a specific problem, it's not very compelling, and the judge doesn't like you don't really give a way for the judge to vote for you, right? So unfortunately, you kind of have to just point out the problems in the case. I wasn't really paying attention to the case that much though, so I don't have any specific feedback on that end.
Hannah, were you paying attention?
Yeah. So I think on the slippery slope thing, I don't really mind, I think, because in general, I think slippery slope doesn't make anything specifically untrue. Like the slopes being untrue would make the argument bad, but that's like your responsibility in rebuttal, not to say this is a slippery slope, but rather this is just not true, right? I'm gonna be honest, I was not paying attention, but I think in general the point behind this case is pretty good, because I think urbanization in general has historically led to problems like these problems, right, that can't be solved, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. It'll be difficult to address these issues, right, that many other first world nations can address when they do urbanize. So even though urbanization has led to good things in nations outside of Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, it could be like specifically a bad thing just because their quality, like their regulations, is not like good enough to keep up with this, right? And I think this just sort of keeps up with like the fact that Africa is just needs a lot more like infrastructure before it can actually develop into something that's like has like free trade going on, or like a lot of these things that come with urbanization, right? And before it can actually handle these things. I think my main advice would just to do more research, because as you do more research, you'll find better evidence, which like will lend more credibility, I guess, to the argument, because I think this argument definitely does have merit, but we just need more evidence.
Yeah. Since I was actually paying attention, I'll talk about my feedback. First of all, I think like the idea of like sickness works really well, but some of your evidence is really vague. It's kind of like it gives a general context, right? But it doesn't talk about like how in urban areas it's different, right? You say like, oh, sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest sanitation coverage, but is this in like urban areas as well? Like, do they get better sanitation in urban areas? And I think you have to explain why uniquely in urban areas it's a lot worse than, rural areas. So you need that like uniqueness. And for like the epidemic part, right? I think a really good thing to look into is probably coronavirus. You can say like, oh, how has,
to be honest though,
urbanization changed the way that coronavirus has spread in like sub-Saharan African countries, or just in general. Like you can take examples from cities in other countries, and you can be like, okay, well, if we didn't have cities, probably wouldn't have happened. And especially in like sub-Saharan Africa, where the government isn't doing that much for like healthcare and infrastructure, I think those effects would probably be a lot more obvious.
To be honest, wait, y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so to be honest, I feel like personally, like the argument works technically, but I feel like you're going to catch a lot of flack that people go like, well, now you're in closer proximity to hospitals and other like you're closer to all these like, and since they're like universities and stuff, there's more integration, which means you have a higher quality of healthcare in the first place. Like just being in a city gives you like higher quality healthcare, closer proximity to high quality healthcare. So I mean, I don't know, like you probably don't want that in your case. You probably only want to like address it like if they actually do bring up like this point. But I feel like you're just going to catch a lot of like flack regarding this in like rebuttals and stuff. That's just my opinion.
I mean, you're gonna catch flack for every argument you run, because that's also, the point of debate. But I mean, I think this will be one of the more stock arguments, so of course there's going to be more rebuttals on that. Okay, does anyone have a case that they haven't represented yet?
Maybe we should do rebuttals. That sounds pretty fun. Actually, rebuttals is like kind of mean to point out the problems in people's cases. Do we want to do rebuttals?
It's a learning process.
That is true. I guess I can pull up Vishnu's case. Okay, Vishnu, why do you always like edit your case to a period? Like, oh wait, never mind, I have it here. You don't have to send it. Yeah, I guess we can just practice rebuttals in this case. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Actually, or you can just open up Vishnu's case too. Maybe we should like, everyone writes a rebuttal to something in this case. And then 10 minutes later, we come back and then we take turns reading it. Sound like a plan? Is that good? Okay, I'll just assume that works.
Are we supposed to be hearing something?
No, we're writing the rebuttals to the case on our own, and in about like 4 minutes, we're gonna share.
Is everyone done? How much longer do we need? Maybe we should wait. Wait, how about let's go until 4:30 and then we'll just go around the table.
Are we still sticking around here?
Yes. Is anyone not done with their rebuttals?
I need 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. All right. Now is anybody not done? Okay, wait an awkward second. That means everyone is done. So I will call on random people. Let's see, first, Natalie Zhang. Hello, Natalie. Will you give us your rebuttal? Hello? Can you hear me? Oh no. Hopefully you're not just opening this and leaving us on red. I guess she cannot. All right, Vishnu, how about you?
Okay. So, is anyone not ready?
We're all good.
Their first contention does not stand because infrastructure has actually been decimated by urbanization. According to Zurich 15, urbanization is a critical driver of social instability, failure of infrastructure, water crises, and the spread of infectious diseases. These negative impacts would actually harm infrastructure much more than build it, showing that when we weigh these two impacts against each other, their first contention doesn't stand. Their second contention also does not stand because it has been shown through many studies that urbanization does not necessarily lead to substantial economic growth. According to Andres Rodriguez Posey, a professor of economic geography at the London School of Economics, as well as a research fellow at CEPR at WeForum 18. The analysis of the link between urban concentration and economic growth suggests that, contrary to the dominant view, there is no uniform relationship between both factors. The impact of urbanization is not necessarily uniform among regions, which means that although in some places it can help with growth, in other places it has actually stifled growth. Thus, because of this non-uniformity, this factor should not be considered while urbanizing a region. The final contention also does not stand because there is no clear impact that results from global recognition of a state or place. For example, the Hong Kong protesters in 2019 had received great global attention and had put in a lot of effort onto their cause, but unfortunately, no major changes had occurred and their protests were largely unsuccessful. Thus, I negate.
Yeah, that was a really good rebuttal. I think it was really good. It said a lot of the things that I would have said. Just one thing on the infrastructure part, I think you could have worded it a little bit differently because, instead of like attacking the link that infrastructure is going to develop, you just say like, oh, urbanization creates social instability because there is no infrastructure, right? But the argument here from Lumen Learning said urbanization increases infrastructure, right? So what you need to, I think instead you could say like, oh yeah, it's great that like in theory that urbanization would increase infrastructure, but like in reality, nothing really happens. And instead, in reality, it causes social instability because there is no infrastructure. Okay. Let's see. How about Daniel Faith? Hello, Daniel. Can we hear your rebuttal? I guess not. Okay. What about Kathy?
Would it be all right if I just sat and listened this time? I need to do a bit more research before I can pull together rebuttals and such.
you don't necessarily need cars. These are just like analytics, but I think it's okay. Okay, sure. We can let someone else go first. How about Juliana? Oh, never mind. Juliana's leaving. All right. I guess there's no one left, but thankfully I wrote a rebuttal, so let's listen to mine before we listen to Kathy's. Okay, so on contention one, what I would say is first, more urbanization doesn't make anything better, and it will actually be worse because in reality, although urbanization did increase health standards for people in urban areas in sub-Saharan Africa, most of that growth happened during the 1990s, and health and sanitation has barely improved since. And instead, 50% of people in urban areas in sub-Saharan Africa, they actually live in slums, which have drastically worse sanitation systems than the rest of the city. And I would say it's probably even worse than if you just lived in a rural area. So I would say urbanization actually makes things worse. Second, urbanization only increases infrastructure when you have a good government in place, which actually does stuff. However, in many sub-Saharan African countries, the governments are corrupt, and their countries, they have a lot of conflict. And even when there isn't conflict or corruption, most governments don't have the system or the power in place to create the larger infrastructure systems needed in these urban areas. And without this infrastructure, it's going to be worse for health because diseases and everything spread a lot faster. And then third, infrastructure has to be planned by the government in order to be effective because it's a citywide change. However, because the government needs to get money to do that, and they tax people for that. But the problem in sub-Saharan African countries is that even in urban areas, most of the work, about 80% is informal work, meaning there's no government that's overseeing this, and there's no corporation or system or business, so it can't really be taxed by the government. So you're not going to see this infrastructure, spring up because the government doesn't even have money. The second contention about economic growth, first, you can turn this because this only works when you build infrastructure, right? But as the person says, in the absence of infrastructure and with poor infrastructure, you actually get negative economic growth, which is exactly what's happening right now. And then on their third contention about the empowerment of people, as Vishnu said, there's no clear impact to this, but also, you can turn it because economic growth goes down because of bad infrastructure, which in turn decreases the empowerment of people. And what I would say is, who wrote this case again?
I did.
Vishnu? Yeah, okay. So I would just say usually when we run different contentions, right, you want them to be separate arguments. You don't really want them to be connected because, I think really your second and third contention, they're all relying on contention one. So if someone takes out contention one, contention 2 and 3 don't really stand. And if you take out contention 2, you also don't get contention 3. So you can't really pick and choose or collapse. So I would just say I think this is more one contention with a lot of different sub-points, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So either you could do that, but I think these could be separate contention ideas. You just need a separate link, right? You can't make the link to empowerment be equal to economic growth, and you can't make the economic growth link be linked to infrastructure. You could just say productivity because everyone's living closer or something. Okay. Let's see. Who else is left? All right, Kathy, do you have your rebuttal ready?
Kind of. So I haven't really done anything on this topic, but I will give it a shot. Okay. So on contention 1 regarding the development of infrastructure, this point only stands under the circumstances that these people are able to actually use this to their benefit and get jobs. And oh my God, sorry, my dog just stole something. All right, sorry. So when it comes to the point about education systems and healthcare, again, this needs something that's directing it. So if people are just moving in closer together, but they don't necessarily have the jobs that they're able to use, then there's no impact to this. And then next, in the terms of economic growth only works if the infrastructure is actually well built and well managed. And in the case of sub-Saharan Africa, there's a high chance that people are just gonna be living closer together with even worse conditions. And then as far as the empowerment of people goes, well, again, if there's not a proper development of infrastructure and people to direct it, then there's going to be no impact from this. And in many cases, these people aren't going to have a voice anyways, because there's going to be no benefit from the infrastructure that's developed and used.
Yes, exactly. Because of infrastructure. Yeah, that was pretty good. I would say
do research. Yeah, I will do that.
No, I wasn't gonna say that because I mean, obviously, you guys didn't have time, but and these are like on the spot rebuttals. What I would say is, when you're making the argument about infrastructure, but how people won't have more jobs and stuff, right? The link there isn't exactly clear to people who haven't really looked at this topic yet, right? Like, okay, why do you have to get a job in order to be able to access education systems? And I think I understand the argument you were going for, oh yeah, without economic growth, people getting jobs, blah blah blah, there's not going to really be money for infrastructure or the development, right? And if people are still really poor, it's probably hard for them to access things like education because you're busy trying to get food on the table and all your kids are probably working instead of going to school. So I think just explain the link there clear